My heartbeat.
Get yours too. I'm gonna skip Eddie toilet will now need to go pay.
All right, good evening. It's bear hunting time, so we're gonna talk about our financial coding system for the schools, right? We're gonna try to take some steps closer to finding our family involvement money. Excuse me. Um, this is gonna kind of be like a twofold thing tonight. Okay, so we are going to look at the new pieces of the tutorial, and we're going to talk about the codes for just a little bit, and then we are going to look at what is on the agenda for approval and take a closer look at those codes. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I do know we have some group members. So if you don't, we're not gonna go over the whole tutorial tonight for the bear hunting game, because it is quite a big document. If you don't have your full copy yet and you would like one, please send me a DM and I will get back to you with the full document. So it's kind of a storytelling document that looks at different documents from the school, right? And it explains the line of codes that we see on like our consultancies for approval pages and on our budget transfer sheets and things like that. So the tutorial takes you through step by step, looking at them. Um, we've we're going to go ahead tonight and look at some of these things here. So I want to take a second to talk about class codes. Um, so class codes, despite how they look, they're really not random. The tutorial does have a list of them, right? And they appear in both Budget A and Budget F of our school district. Um, finance paperwork, right? So when you look at a piece of code, the class codes are the very first piece. So on your screen, you should see two examples or three examples of coding. All say F dash 21100 or A dash 21100 with other pieces of code to follow. All three examples of this code right here have the same class code. It's class code 21100. Now, to know what that means, we turn to our school budget, and they're the same in budget A as budget F. So what we have readily available to us was budget A, and we use budget A to figure out that class code 211 means teaching regular school. Now, there are more class codes than what you're looking at right this second. What I've done in the newest part of the tutorial is pull out the ones that are most likely to have our family involvement money. Now, if you look at the example that's here, the example from this month's consultancies confirm that a portion of this $800 came from Title I and Title IV. And those who have been in this group for a while and have gone through the Power of a PTO training know that Title I does include family involvement and money reserved for family involvement. So in a way, we just, got a kind of very close to the family involvement money, and that we see here. Um, we can tell by this particular example that Title One money is held in the teaching regular school pot, right? So, um, the thing about pulling this all together is we kind of jump around a little bit and back and forth. So we use different pieces of different things to help us understand things. Ideally, though, the class codes are your big picture codes. So, before the One money is given out to different schools or into different projects or programs or anything like that, the money is classified with a code that says which part of the education law is it most affiliated with, right? Um, and teaching regular school is the one we see in that example there. So now we're going to look at a different part of the code, and we're going to look at program codes. Program codes exist on the right. They are the second to last thing here, um, in this example. So in this particular example, um, these are program codes, these sets of zeros, right? So, program codes are in a way they're opposite than class codes because they look at the smaller picture. Um, in this particular example, we're looking at the authorization for the Elmcrest uh, administrative services and some of the Elmcrest summer school services, right? And they've been authorized for another school year. The program coding is 00000 here, and it's still slightly unclear exactly what the logic is behind using the set of 5 zeros. Okay, so it could be a couple different things. You could have a chief who has access to using all the codes and just has to do a lot of this type of paperwork and is bored and just uses 00000 to get through it. It could be because this is an example of after school program that has a specific grant. So when you listen to the gentleman who announced these things at the work session, he did mention that part of this was coming straight from the Elmcrest school grant. Now, Elmcrest is what you call a special school. So this particular special school has its own grant money, and that could be a reason why it says 00000 point grant number, G whatever. We're gonna have to keep reading more codes to kind of get a better sense of exactly what the relationship here is, because both grant codes and program codes use small um use a micro look, right? um and just to point out an example, I just said, that the Elmcrest Learning Center was a special school, which is why you see a different class code on the left. Instead of 211, it's 2300. Okay. But that's what we're really looking at in Act 6 here, the tutorial is trying to get an idea of our program codes and grants. From what I can gather, it looks like program codes and grants are pretty similar things. Um, we know that they approved this during the summer, so we know they're reauthorizing a whole bunch of stuff for the next school year right now. So another reason why it might say 00000 is because they're just not done distributing it, right? Like it's the $53,680 to go to billing, but then is it going to go to accounts or whatever? We're still learning about program codes, even though we have decoded a lot of them, which we'll look at in just a second. I do want to point out this example here. So, in the tutorial, it talks about if New York State changes the way schools have to bill, some of the billing procedures for teaching a special school program. And the board used the grant money to send the staff on a 2-day, 1-night trip. The new code for this training would look something like this. So I included this in the tutorial to give an example of how the grant codes and the program codes are kind of similar, right? So the grant code here is still the same because it's a trip specifically related to the Elm Crest special program, and the Elm Crest special staff would be the ones going on the trip. Okay, so we still have the special class, teaching special schools class code. We have the department. We have this number is different now. So 4750 is a it means it's coming out of the staff training account. Operating unit would be the Board of Education or a superintendent who approved this. And then our program code and this example is 0400 because it's a staff travel program or activity or project, right? And then the grant code is the same. So like I said, I included that just to give you an idea of how these codes are running and when we might see changes to the code. Now, we're going to take a quick break here for those who do have the full tutorial, and I'm going to answer these review questions together. Which part of the school's code line serves as an endorsement and provides a legal justification for the school receiving, spending, or allocating money? So that is the class codes, right? So it's the legal endorsement is a class code that it explains which section of the law the money exists for or is allocated to, and more specifically, why they're allowed to accept the money, right? Because schools have to, they can only do certain things. So everything they take in, no matter what, has to have a legal justification. And those are what you see with the class codes. Um, what is the account type for student travel and field trips? That is letter B 4750. So we haven't talked about accounts tonight. These review questions do look at the whole tutorial document, and you would have either needed to have a copy of the Syracuse City School District budget that's available on the syracuse.gov website, or the full copy of the tutorial in order to answer that question, because you can see it, you can find that answer in some of the clues above. And I just gave away the answer to question 4, or question 3, where can you find the full list of account types? You can find all the full list of account types in the Syracuse City budget under the school section. They're all spelled out there with what each account is. And then question 4 is, which of the following is the operating code for instruction and curriculum and development? We only have two choices here. It's CIA or COA. The correct answer is A, CIA. COA is a department code for co-curricular activities department. You inside?
Well, just go with her to go to the store. So our house is ours.
So you're going with her to the store?
Juju.
Oh, Juju went to the store. Well, it's 9 o'clock. You don't really need to be out there anyways. Um, okay. So that was a little brain break, refresher. And now we're gonna look at some more of our program codes. So the last example of a program code, we looked at an after-school program that had its own funding source, its own grant, making operation possible. In this example that you see on your screen, which also is due to be voted on next week at the next board meeting, um, we can look here and we see something's happened, right? We still have a grant code, but we have a different program code. It's 33460. Now we have to use some more critical thinking here to kind of get an understanding of what's going on. So, clue 15, when you look at the other consultancies for approval, we do see that the 21st Century Learning Grant is being applied to various different places. So, that's one of our given clues. And then the second clue we have about why we have an actual program code here instead of all zeros is that we know that the after school programs at Huntington, Roberts, and Webster are not new programs, right? They exist year after year. So perhaps part of the reason why we see a more traditional program code here is because these programs don't have a new grant attached to them. The school district funds them one way or another every year. So when they do their operating budgets and they look at the Title I funding and the federal money, they're designating a piece of that federal money into this program every year. And and after school programs do have their own uh, traditional program code, which is 33460. And you can see that right there over here in front of the grant line. Now, um the thing that we're still working out here is why do some of these program codes show up in all zeros? Why do some of them show up as actual program codes? Um, so the logic and the idea about whether or not the program has a specific grant for it, that's one logically plausible explanation, right? In other places, we see different accents in the code. So even though the they're letting off really obnoxious fireworks in front of my house. Sorry. So even though the code is still has all the pieces, the accents in the code are different. So that could mean that there's more than one person writing up these documents. And the fact that we see so many groups of 5 zeros in the program lines of our district codes could just be a margin of error, right? Like they maybe the Elm maybe the very first example we looked at tonight should have had the right program, should have had that traditional program code, but there was a human made a mistake, right? And then in that same respect, it could be because um the staff was trained differently on how to do those documents. So maybe there's somebody working in the department that just doesn't know what all of the program codes. Now, realistically, at least my instincts tell me that that sounds really suspect, right? Chances are that's not it. A lot of the people who are working in these documents, they're tenure school people. They've been there for 10, 15, 20 years. They're very trustworthy. Nobody bothers them. They never go publicly. Then they don't have a public facing role. Like they're deep in the shadows and deep in the woods, putting all of this stuff together. But margin of error uh is one possible explanation. So we can't just pretend like the a margin of error may not be existing here. Um, and so the thing is, and I don't say this directly in this document, but I'm worried because, um, like for the operating units, they use 000 a lot. And it in operating units, it really does look like an overuse of 000. Like there could be another code they could be using. Student support services, curriculum development, they all have operating unit codes. And they should be reported and recorded correctly and accordingly. But our agency administrators are in part so comfortable, and no one's ever really, nobody understands this stuff. So it's easier just to type, oh, I got to do 12 of these today. I'm just going to type in 0000000 12 times and be done with it. You know what I mean? Um, there is a level of concern here that that is happening when we look at our examples for program codes. Now, another thing is that the district may just be trying to be secretive. We don't know. We'll have to see with what happens now that we've had this conversation semi-publicly. We'll have to see what some of the other paperwork looks like when it comes out. I'm not going to assume that they're trying to be secretive and make things harder. I really do think that it is potentially a laziness issue, um, and even just having old systems, right? Because it is possible that the systems just require them to use 00000. For our hunt on family involvement money, um, we just need to be aware of what those possibility means, what those different possibilities could mean as we continue looking and trying to extract the information. So we don't necessarily need to know exactly why so many zeros are showing up concretely. We just need to have some type of logical idea as to what could be going on or what could be causing so many zeros to show up. And when we go and we look at these more closely, um, hopefully we'll get a better idea and a better understanding of those things. Before we look uh, at before we get really code specific, I do just want to take a second and show you guys these program codes. Now I've scoured all the budget transfer reports from 2019 until current. And I've read them back and forth and I've compared them with one another. And these are the program codes that I've been able to decipher. Um, Continuing education, science, there's a bunch of CTE programs. There's actually more than that, um, because we have about 20 different CTE programs. but generally speaking, the CTE programs range between 261 and 279. New York teacher prep program, so that's training, teacher training, college residency program. We pay colleges to refer us their students. In-service training is training for teachers who are, um, I think that those are the ones who aren't certified yet. So that's helping teachers become certified. Um, Reading regular school is 401. Then we have the night school program. Urban fellowship program is 1240. This is another college readiness program at 2180 and 2181. The superintendent's cabinet is there at 2190. CPR health attendance. We have regular education, out of state travel, security, special education tuition, our AVID program, 11260. All the coding that shows up in this one does relate to science, but I think it's science training or something of that combination. Then we have enrichment, where everybody belongs. This is our diversity, equity, and belonging curriculum at 15100. We have the ELMS Exceptionary Learning Program. So this is Exceptionary Learning is a grant. So I believe, and I'll have to go look, and we're gonna go look in just a second at some of the stuff that's coming through this summer, which will kind of solidify what program 15600 is. This is a teacher career ladder program thing, some type of getting promotions or moving throughout the district. Then we have our after school program, and then we have the CARES program. So there's probably more program codes. I don't know if we're going to be able to see them. It depends on what the transfer reports look like. Like this month's transfer report is empty. There is only one thing. Now that makes sense-ish, because it's the end of the year, and possibly because they know that we are watching them very closely and that we have begun to decode this code. So we're just going to, essentially wait it out. And as more pieces of code come in, we'll plug them into the place where they belong in the document. I am now, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to just give a small opinion here on what I think is happening with program codes. So I have a very strong suspicion that the program codes were originally designed for um regular schools. Okay, so before we started getting all of our charter schools, before we started getting our special programs, um, when we just had nothing but regular schools, we had program codes, and every regular school had every one of those regular programs in it. Now, at some point, we switched into 21st century schools. Now, when I say 21st century schools and I talk about technology and all that stuff, it sounds really good. But the reality is there really is like a legal endorsement behind 21st century schools. Like the federal laws have been amended to better represent 20th and 19th century education compared to 21st century education, right? So I the our Title One money is generally going to be in, like we saw it was in the regular school class. So it should show up throughout our traditional program codes. And there's a reason why I keep using that word traditional versus 21st century. Because when we look at this grant here, right? When we look at this example in the tutorial, this specific example, we're just going to go back for a second. Here, when we talk about the regular after school program at Huntington, right? So Huntington, Webster, and Roberts, those are regular schools that have a regular after school program. Um, oh my goodness, I just totally lost my thought. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, that's right. In this line code, we see the regular program code and we see the grant code. When we read the description, we find out that they're actually doing a 21st century project with that regular school program. Okay, so they are doing they're using the 21st century grant money to do a data evaluation, intel uh, collection on the regular school programs. So we'll have to watch a little bit more to see if that dynamic holds true. Like, do we see grant codes when it's a 21st century opportunity and just program codes when it's a basic traditional regular school opportunity? We don't quite know yet. We haven't looked at enough of the federal coding to really get an idea. But we have looked at the federal coding enough to come up with some um better understanding. And with that, I'm going to bring you guys over to this list. So this is the same list that we did last year. Okay, but it's in Excel instead of on Google Sheets, and we've added another piece of information. So these are your consultancies, right? Every month when they go to spend money, this is the sheet that splits the money being spent into the different departments, and we use it to total how much money the different departments spend throughout that year. This time we've added the code here next to each of these. And I want to go ahead and talk about this. Now it's summertime, okay? So all of the federal funding that you see, everything in orange is from budget F. Everything in black is from budget A. And the months are over what month it is, whether it was last month or this upcoming month. See, I've added 710 on here early so we could do this video tonight. Um, we have two examples here of Title One and Title Four funding. They have different grant numbers next to them, which makes sense because Title One and Title Four all are different, but they have the same generic 0000 program code. We have another one here, and this is the one that we used in the example on the tutorial. It's the 21st Century Learning Grant, and it is, we see the after school program code. When we look at these ones here, um, we see, and we'll have to click on this to be able to read it fully here. This is the Employment Preparation Education Grant. And it told us that rate on the documents this month, and it's program code 01090. 01090 might actually be a new program. 01090. Yes, so that is a program code that I actually don't have on my list yet. So we're going to go back in here to the tutorial page, right? And we are going to find it where it should go in the numbers 02 box, 017, 019. So we are going to insert a row below. Add a border on the top of this, and add a border on the top of this. And we're going to do 01090. Use an O there as a placeholder. 01090. Now, when we're doing this, it's always really, really important to go back and make sure that we transferred that right. Okay, now we can go look and see over here and look at these descriptions to try to figure out between these two things, look at the descriptions to see what program that is. So this program is located at 516 Prospect Avenue, and it's to provide refugee assistance and adult education and continuing education program services to persons aged 21 years or older. So we can go look at this one, and we can say at St. Lucy's Academy, located at 422 Gifford Street, to provide adult education and continuing education program services to persons 21 age and older. We'll look at this one. This one is also to provide adult education and literacy services to assist out-of-school youth and adults in the completion of a secondary education. Specifically, Program Area 1 provides funding for adult basic education and literary services. So we can decide based on that Program 01090 would be adult education programs. Okay, and we are going to go, that's a different copy of our program list. But we're going to go back into here, and we are going to add adult education. And we actually have to add it in one other place. So that this right here, literally what I'm doing right now, this is bear hunting, and you guys are bear hunting with me. So that's why I wanted to come in live tonight and show you guys how this has been playing out. So you can kind of not only bear hunt on your own, but if you are one of our awesome people who does go to the PTO meetings, um you can share with them this. See, now we're gonna get all messed up here because we're adding another row, so it's going to overlap. Oh, it pushed it down. Perfect. So 0, 1. What was it? 0, 0, 1. What? It's late. My brain doesn't like numbers when it gets this late. 0, 1, 0, 9, 0. 0, 1, 0, 9, 0. Um, adult education program. So if you have a copy of the tutorial, right? And it's on your computer or you printed it out, make sure you go and make this addition, right? Because the copy we uploaded earlier doesn't have that. You just watched me add it. We just figured out what that program was together. We can go back here and look at this again. So now see something happened here because we have another program that this third line of orange code here is also for adult education and literacy, but our program code is 00000. So my question here becomes, why are those zeros and not that correct program code? Is it because somebody else worked on preparing this contract? Is it because this grant, WIOAABE, comes from the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and that's extremely new, right? So did they stop trying to At some point, did the district say, okay, we're going to keep using these program codes, but when we get new funding for new projects or new initiatives and new incentives, we're going to go ahead and use a grant code and just leave the program code blank because this is a specific grant. Both things still see both are in the realm of possibilities right now. We still don't have enough to do process. We're trying to process of elimination, but right now both of those theories still kind of hold true. The same thing goes for this down here. In these next two orange examples of grant codes, right? So we see one example here for the Street Addiction Institute where they didn't even bother putting in program code or even the they didn't even bother putting in the program code at all, right? Like right here, it goes from operating unit straight to grant code. Um, so is that because the grant code, this is a 21st century grant, and they're using in a more modern day program where they're not classifying it with programs, they're just using grants, or what happened? Same with the code below it. We're back to seeing all zeros. So the question becomes, is the Recover's grant, which we know is new, right? Because they ran out of ARPA funding, but now they got Recover's funding. Um, is that why we have all zeros there? What is this particular one doing for the restorative center? It's delivering a unique power sharing model of restorative justice that creates section space for students. Now, I think you guys kind of understand, hopefully by now, where we're at as part as the coding piece. Now we're going to take the information in front of us and talk about this a little bit differently. The restorative center and the restorative justice has existed in our school district for quite a while. Okay. Um, Unlike the Street Addiction Institute, which is paid out of budget A, our operating budget, our restorative justice money is still being covered by different grants each year. Like, okay, so this year we're using ARPA and this year we're using Recovis to uh, provide our restorative uh, justice curriculum. So what does that tell us? That tells us a couple different things. One, it tells us that there's no concrete plan yet that they're going to keep this money or they're going to keep this program in the schools, right? So if they were going to keep it every year and they knew they were going to use it, it would be instantly transferred over into budget A, right? Because it would become an operating expense, like a guaranteed thing. It would go into the A pile. Instead, it's in budget F, which is, oh, well, if we have the money, these are the things we're going to do. Now, this particular program with the Restorative Justice Center is really interesting for more than just, it's interesting not only because it's one of those things that's floating around being covered by different funding this year and then different funding the next year. I don't know too much about the curriculum itself, but what I have heard from when people talk about it is that nobody really understands it. Like there's a pretty big debate going on as to exactly what the restorative justice is, when it's supposed to be taking place, what places are included, what parts of the disciplinary process are included in restorative justice, which may be part of the reason why it's one of those things that's floating by, well, this grant or this grant or this grant and give this grant. Another thing that we have to talk about when we talk about this is I'm pretty sure they're using this only when and after they got in trouble with the state for how they were disciplining people, right? And you heard about that if you watched the work session, specifically the education about the code of conduct. We did get in trouble for how we were disciplining our students. Um, and the state came in and said we had to do something differently. And since then, we've been pushing a restorative justice thing. But the staff communicates that they don't quite understand it and it's not really clear. And so does the Board of Education. You hear them in flux about this and what it means. Um, so it's really interesting to see that our federal COVID money, the money that is meant to help us recover our learning loss from COVID, this year is being used to support that program, which essentially exists as a punishment. So that's like the school got in trouble. You got to go do community service, and the school is choosing to use the Recovus money to um settle their bad troubles, right? So rather than pulling it out of staff travel or pulling it out of whatever, I don't know, any other various things, they chose the Recovus one. We are going to take, there's a lot of stuff. Let me just say this. Here's another opinion of mine. There's a lot of stuff in the teaching and learning section this year that I really am not too hot about. Um, I will credit where credit is due. President Tamika Barnett, excuse me. And this is why my teeth look so bad. I'm stuck on this stuff. But there is one thing that the Office of Teaching and Learning asked for this year that President Barnett said she's not going to be looking at passing, or that she's not going to include on her agenda for approving because of whatever the evaluation looked like. All right. And apparently the evaluation suggests that that particular program, which is called um, Good Life Philanthropic, um, she's not too happy with the evaluation, so that's not going on the agenda for July 10th. If you want to go hear what she said about that, you can go to the work session and try and scroll into the meeting to 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 16 seconds, and you'll hear straight from President Barnett about how she feels about Good Life Philanthropic. So you don't have to take it from me. You are able to go listen to what she said. While you are there, though, please take a listen to what was said about these next two things here. Even though they are not federal funds, we are going to talk about, as we always do, what I think about these contracts um as they come up for approval. Total of $185,000 this year is being spent to who? I don't know if you guys can see this right here, but that says Frank Fowler. $185,000 is being spent to Frank Fowler for two different things. To work as a liaison between the district, the city, and the police department focused on safety and crisis prevention. Woo-hoo. And then the other one is for prevention assemblies focused on drug awareness, personal safety, social media awarenesses, and dangers. Um, Now that's really generic. And when you go and look at these, you also see that they are generic, and you also see that Frank Fowler is one of the only contracts in the entire district who is being paid money but does not have an evaluation process attached to that pay. So there's no way the district does not have a clear way to define how they are evaluating their work with Frank Fowler. And again, this is not something that I am making up. You can go to the work session and listen to it yourself. But I am bringing it up for attention today for a couple different reasons. For one, it just seems really crooked that of all the people who don't have an evaluation, it would be Frank Fowler. Like that's really just like saying, "Oh, here, friend, you retired and you lost your election, and but we still like you, so let me give you $100,000 as a year to what work as a liaison, and I'll give you another $85,000 to go have assemblies with our kids." And these assemblies are based on drug awareness, personal safety, social media awareness, and dangers. Now, another thing we need to point out here, and why I bring these up tonight, is because Frank Fowler gets paid through this contract. The police get paid through this contract to go into our schools and talk about drugs already. So the any idea that uh the police came in and did that because of the settlement money that they're getting for the vaping lawsuits is false. Okay, so we have not seen anything yet from the vaping litigation last year that explains how they're helping what they did with the last $100,000 that they got for suing a vape company. And we've not seen anything yet about the money that they will be getting from the Attorney General as far as vaping. There's one other thing that I want to say here, and I don't quite have it in front of me. Oh, yes, I do. Let me show you. I want to show you guys something while we're talking about where our money is coming and going from. There's something that has typically been missing that I have not been able, that I'm surprised I've not seen more of. Given everything that's in the news and everything that's in the community, going on in the community right now, there's one name that I really expected to see a lot more, but I have only seen it once. And that name that has only appeared once between 2019 and now is Micron. It's only appeared one time. And it only appears one time in a grant, a CTE grant for our Nottingham school. P-Tech cohort, semiconductor, Micron technology, or I apologize, not Nottingham, Micron technology at Corcoran. $150,000 came in from a grant in the fifth month of 2023. That's the only time I've seen the Micron name show up. They're not making donations. They're not providing grant money. They're not funding field trips this year. The only time I've seen Micron show up was one time in the startup cohort grant for Corcoran High School. Okay, so if anyone was wondering why the school district is spending so much time on their Facebook page highlighting Corcoran and trying to make Corcoran looks good, it's because that's their Micron in School program. And the video on unraveling the crown layers of chronic absenteeism I did, which talks about who's got that knife. Um, that also took place at the Micron school. So, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the community? What does that mean for Micron and all the things that they say and all the talk they did about how they're going to be coming in with the schools and doing all of these things and engaging and blah 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 blah. Have not seen it yet. Now, could we see it? Absolutely. And why should we already see it? Because they already have all of these programs. Okay, it's not like they have to go design new programs. It's not like they're doing anything new or exciting for the kids in Syracuse. They're literally just using the things that they've done in other places across the country and dropping them off here. That's why the exhibit at the most isn't that cool. But whatever. What do I know? So go ahead and ask about Micron when you can. to whatever public official, school official you can happen to get them from. We're hitting right about that hour mark here. So, we're gonna jump back in to the consultancies that are up for running. This one's cool. Mickey Walker is doing us a really big favor. Anybody who's interested in athletics, they're getting some training to educate students and staff from grades 7 to 12 on the NCAA standards and requirements to qualify for uh, college athletics because I guess they weren't doing it correctly and they recognized that. And this guy's, look at that. This guy's doing that for just for $50,000. Much cheaper than what Frank Fowler's doing for us. But hey, um student support services also has some interesting stuff coming through uh in the past 2 months that have related to federal funds, and I just want to take a minute and look at these real quick. Last month, Tucker Missionary Baptist Church got $15,000 to provide a secure learning environment, and I really thought this was a typo when I first read it, then I realized it wasn't. They used the last bit of our ARPA funding to cash out at Tucker Missionary Baptist Church for students participating in the district's homebound program through August 31st, 2024. So June, July, August, we're paying Tucker Missionary Baptist Church $5,000 a month to use their space. Open Arms International Ministry also got cashed out with our same ARPA funds. I don't know who's in these churches, but I bet you money these churches are friends to some of the district and the Board of the Education, which is making decisions. And that's just my gut because nepotism is alive and well, and we see the impacts of that in our district. And I could be wrong, and if I am, I'm sorry. And that's not a judgment on the fact that it says church. That's just knowing and having my own experiences with some of these people in the district and listening to what my friend Dr. Dexter says, because he knows a lot more than you think. He talks really fast and he gets really sidetracked, but he'd be on point with a couple things. Elite Gaming again. This is one of those things where we're spending so much money on Elite Gaming right now. This is like the sixth time in the past 6 months that we've cashed them out for more than $15,000. But you hear nothing about it. You have no idea that they're in our schools or all the different things that they're doing in our schools. And that is an issue, okay? Because it's coming out of ARPA money. It's coming out of teacher or teaching regular schools money. So there's a good possibility that some of the family involvement money we're looking for is being dumped into Elite Gaming. And it's not, I personally don't want my kid using virtual reality until she's well past the approved age of 14. Okay. I want her brain fully developed before she starts dealing with virtual reality. Social media is already damaging her brain. We have no idea what virtual reality would be doing. Yet our schools get stuck in the conundrum where they want to train their kids on the latest technology and be workforce ready, and no one's really looking at if there's mental health uh, side effects to virtual technology and those types of elite gaming activities yet. So, um, even though I don't like virtual reality, and I wouldn't take my kid to an after school activity or a family involvement activity where she was able to participate in wearing a virtual reality headset, for example. If they're pulling it out of teaching regular schools, out of ARPA, we're going to use this as an example. Let's say, and then hypothetically say the ARPA grant has a section about family and community involvement, which I'm pretty sure it does because it kind of just boosts the original thing, then w- is where they're pulling the elite gaming from appropriate or not? Should they be paying for it with that pot of money? That depends on if they're actually giving us families opportunities. Now, I've looked at some of the stuff Elite Gaming is doing. They're training our staff. They're training our students. They're running robotics competitions. Maybe no, that's might be CTE, but they're doing like some computer gamings and some computer uh venue activity things. Those things should be including parents if it's being spent with family involvement money. And what happens is um we we are not getting those opportunities to engage in our children's level education in that way because instead of looking at this stuff, instead of giving a tutorial, instead of giving a 3-4 week training which goes over the steps on how to read this code or whatever, all we get from the district is this. And this is where I'm going to end it for you guys tonight. All we get is this. Okay, we get this little pretty animated tool that says, where do you think we should go? And family involvement isn't even an option on this list, right? Our only choices are student learning, social emotional learning, health and safety, technology, staffing, charter schools, district-wide supports. Family and involvement isn't even an option in the balancing act. So, how does that help the Parent Advisory Council, who per law is responsible for making sure our family involvement legally restricted dollars are being spent effectively and efficiently? The answer is it doesn't. Right? The balancing act doesn't help us do that. It doesn't even talk about family involvement. Now, yes, we are up against a district who isn't really interested in having families all that involved. But at the end of the day, the law is the law, and it is what it is. And we're here now, and the codes have been decoded, and we're going to keep gathering pieces of information and take a look at this because Elite Gaming is the perfect example. If Elite Gaming is spending our family involvement dollars, then Elite Gaming needs to be in our school sites, in our communities, after school, on our social media pages, advertising family involvement events. Or they don't need another contract. Or the district needs to say, we're going to stop pulling this money out of this bucket because they're not meeting all of their requirements. We're still going to work with Elite Gaming, but instead of pulling it out of our Title I family involvement money, we're going to pull it out of computer assisted technology money. And because we're pulling it out of computer assisted technology money next year, when we do our budget, we're going to budget that department to have more money in the first place. So we don't have to constantly be transferring money from this into the computer assisted technology, right? And when we start to have those conversations, when we understand the code and we start to have those conversations and we can really look at this and more than just one or two people or a couple people understand how the codes work, then we will get to being a more effective school, right? Because we'll have our money lined up confidently, we'll be able to budget a little bit better, um plan for things a little bit better, pursue the right kind of grants. Like, who knows? Maybe I'm the oddball. Maybe I'm the only one who's worried about 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds in virtual reality equipment. Maybe I'm the only one who realizes that the school district has no way to put a firewall on the virtual reality equipment like they do a normal computer. Maybe I'm the only one who realizes that The school district already owns an entire classroom worth of virtual reality equipment, and they haven't made any policy or procedure as to how they're going to use it, who's going to use it, and how that equipment is going to be shared among which students and when. Because Micron gave them that equipment almost going into 3 years ago now. They've had it for 3 years. So, and have they engaged families in that conversation? No, absolutely not. He threw the equipment at us like, "Oh, here, take these toys. You will be okay. You're a bunch of idiots anyways." Um, I was not impressed with the visit from my grand as part of the parent council, let me just tell you. But it's been an hour. I gotta work tomorrow. We're gonna stop this here. I hope that you guys were able to follow along. I hope that you guys found it interesting. Um, and I will talk to you again soon. Good night.